All right, back down with the Petty brothers, Timmy, Mark, and Richie, going back to some of our racing memories. And these are our memories. This is what we remember. It may not be exactly what happened, but in our minds, this is what we grew up with.
It's the truth as we know it.
So we want to share with you some of our memories. So we're going to go back to a big time memory for the whole Petty family. 1981, the Daytona 500. And most people just see the glory in the victory lane and the excitement of Richard winning. But that whole week was a trying week for the whole Petty crew. Everybody worked their butts off and worked together to get to that moment. This jacket and hat, this is what our dad wore during that race. And so that's kind of neat to have it with us today as we talk about the memory of the Daytona 500 in 1981.
Well, you got to include the 79 as well to go along with this. Both were Daytona victories.
Well, it's just the work that goes into any Daytona 500, whether it was 1959 or 2022.
So some of this is going to intermingle.
Right. So most people think of Daytona February. In the Petty shops, Daytona started in November, didn't it, Timmy?
Yes, and our dad, who was religiously running that dyno from time, even before the season ended previous, they would work day and night working on the next Daytona trick.
Well, y'all had a test right early December,
right? Back then you did test,
right.
And you went to Talladega as well. But
wind tunnels.
If you'll remember, in 81, they were still kind of in and out with the Dodge world and whatnot, and because we looked at that picture the other day in that Murata, and we'd like to have that car.
That's a whole other story. Right. I didn't think about that. Right. That's great.
That's right.
Because all the work going on for Daytona, you throw this into the mix.
Right.
So go ahead.
So they went and tested in late 80, and so...
Well, you got to remember, this is when they're downsizing cars, too.
From the big wheelbase to the small.
Yeah, from like the Magnum and all, and the Chevrolet.
And had already been running from 78 to 79, and 80 was the Oldsmobiles and Monte Carlos. So Chevrolet GM camp. Right. So they had this brainstorm idea because the Dodge motor made a little bit more power with the cast iron heads and blah, 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 blah. But anyway, so they built a Dodge Murata on a Mike Laughlin chassis, right?
Right.
Is that not, is that the way y'all remember?
Sounds right to me.
Yeah, I was 10.
Okay. but still,
I just know what you taught us,
But anyway, that's what happened. And so they went and tested. Gosh, it was late. It was late.
Yeah.
I don't remember the month. But they went down to Daytona, and they tested the Murata, which was a sleek-looking little car.
It was a good-looking car.
For the downsized wheelbase.
Yes, it looked good.
And when they cut it clean, the story was always said that it would not make it back. After he cut her off, it just was...
Now,
did a plug check in the middle of the back stretch.
When Timmy's talking about cutting it clean, exactly. You're running down the back stretch, and you're holding it wide open. You reach over and you mash the clutch, and you hit the...
For a tune check.
And you turn it off clean.
That's before computers.
So you could read the spark plugs.
Yeah. So if you're running too lean, you need some more timing.
So they had to...
So that Murata wouldn't coast back to the garage, basically.
I think that was the car.
And the importance of a plug check is so you don't burn the piston.
So I don't even think we looked at the plugs. They loaded the thing up and drove her back to level cross.
Yep.
So they took the...
They come right in.
They took the gas axles and the sawzalls and whatever else they had, Ziz wheels, and cut the body off and put an 81 Buick Regal on it. But and anyway, I know this is going to intermix, and sorry for the back and forth, but we're going to go back and forth today.
So they come back from the Murata, cut it off, put a Buick on. Did they ever go back and test with the Buick?
Man, I don't know. I mean, that's going to be for our next guest.
When you get Aaron Dudley in there.
Aaron remembers all that stuff. So we need to get Aaron Dudley up here, so this is a reach out.
But again, you're talking about going back and forth. This is just
our memories.
Our memories of the work that was involved in winning a Daytona 500.
So,
and not only that, you're running two cars too, because Kyle's in here too.
And that was and I don't. We'll have to think about that one before we talk about it again. But and we'll bring it up again.
So we're getting two cars ready.
Right.
And in the mix there, somebody come up with the brainstorm to run the Murata, went down there and tested, it didn't work, come back, cut
Project
the body
failed.
off. So we're going back to Daytona for February with the Buick Regal.
Right. All right, so all that stuff happened. And like I said, I want to go back to 79 as well because this happened in 79 as well. What happened is you would build probably 10 with 2 cars with 10 engines to go to Daytona. And like I said, Daddy was working on it all the way through. And you'd have a couple that was really good and a couple that was just But
you could put the exact same parts in the same engines, and for some reason, you always had one that would make
a block
5.
would be better.
Yeah,
and I can't explain it, but it would
people
seal
up better.
Been in it a long time will get that.
Right.
Especially back then with the cast iron cylinder heads. But anyway, so we were down there. They run the 125s, and this happened in 1979 and 81. Get done with the race, and that was your best engine, even though you'd already qualified, and people back then you changed engines back and forth. Like you said, there might be 10 or 12 engines per teams.
Like nowadays racing, you get one engine for the whole weekend and everything. Back then, I mean, it was like changing.
Qualifier, 125.
You'd have drivers go out and they'd make 2 laps. They'd come back in and say, "No, it's not there." They wouldn't feel the torque right. They wouldn't feel this. So they would snatch engines.
And they'd have a truck down there with extra engines.
Yes.
Well, and also these are the days that you had 3 rounds of qualifying,
right?
And numerous practices, right?
So this
is engine changing. What they were snatching and grabbing the whole week, wasn't they?
So evidently, this was sort of a choreographed deal in 1979, which Richard Petty won the race. In 1981, he won the race, and this happened both times. And what happened is after the 125, they had got together, and that was their best engine.
Richard liked it for some reason.
And there was another duplicate pair of cylinder heads in level cross. And instead of, like a lot of folks took their engines out and they would redo them and build them right out there in the sand. I've seen it happen 100 times. But we put that thing in Daddy's Dodge van. You guys stayed back with Mother in Florida. Elizabeth Ann, me, and Daddy, which I was basically the driver because I was old enough to drive. Right. And Daddy got the rest. But we would get that motor as soon as that race was over with. They yanked the motor out, we put it in there, and we hauled butt to North Carolina.
Now remember, this is before cell phones. This is before communications like we know of
This
today.
had to be executed properly.
So he picks up the phone, and before he leaves Daytona Beach.
This is Thursday before the 500.
He calls home and tells them, "I'm coming in. I want this.
This guy, and this is what time we'll be there."
Everybody's going to have their little stations.
So that's about an 8 to 9 hour trip back then in the van. From Daytona to Level Cross. We come home, and those guys are standing there.
Sitting there waiting at the hoist, ready to unload it out of the van.
And it's asses and elbows.
Another Timmy Petty quote.
Well, I mean, and like I said, I don't even know if Daddy went home and took a shower. A lot of times, there's other stories, but we'll get into that later. We're going to kind of condense this. But they take the motor apart on Friday morning. Hone it, put new pistons, new rings, new bearings, the whole deal.
Complete rebuild.
Put it on a dyno, and it was quite a break-in. I probably had a new camshaft, and that required a whole break-in process with break-in springs, all the witch doctor stuff, and did all that. Had it back together by Friday evening. It's loaded up. And we're out. Now,
during that diner run, Daddy say, "Bleed or blister, bitch."
Amongst other things. But this was already, I mean, this had to happen.
But y'all had to get back for Saturday practice.
You had to get the motor back in the car Saturday morning for final practice. Because you did want to put a few laps on. I don't think they put many laps on it because they already knew what they had. The setup was there. And, and like I said, 1979 it happened. In 1981.
So you're talking about leaving Daytona 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon after the qualifying race?
Yes.
And then being back in Daytona at what, 8 o'clock Saturday morning?
It was earlier than that.
So 4 or 5 o'clock
we were there. We were there waiting on the gates to open.
So you're talking about a 30, 35, 36 hour.
And I was the main driver, and Daddy. I mean, we did.
And during this time, these cars were squirrely. So they were messed with spoilers. They never got the setups exactly like the drivers really liked. The only guy that really down there was comfortable was Bobby Allison because he showed up. He hoodooed everybody and showed up in that Le Mans.
Yeah.
And that car would stick, buddy.
But like I said, and we're going to get into the Disney World.
Well, back to you coming in Saturday morning.
Well, they put the motor in and did the final practice, and it's ready to go to Daytona. Well, you won both races. But Daddy he was a little bit superstitious, wouldn't you think?
Well, yeah. But that's a whole. We'll get into that in a second. But the race that come down to the end there, and Bobby had
both 79 and 81.
He won. Bobby had him covered.
Right.
We've talked about this in another episode, but Bobby had him covered.
And it would come down to a few mileage and slash.
Well, it's the famous gas and go race.
Right.
I mean, everybody.
They seen that they didn't.
Bobby come in and put 4 tires on,
and they didn't. They hadn't wore tires all week.
Right.
They'd been looking at that, and they'd been talking about this since the 125.
Right.
Like, hey, our tires are.
So Daddy, who could basically do it in his head. I mean, figured fuel mileage, and they were counting seconds, and I remember him saying distinctly, "Come in hard and leads in."
Yeah.
And I mean that was one of the commands that come from the pits was, "Come in hard and leave." Because like I said, the plan was already in place.
Right, and he told the gas man, he said, "You count it off." And
yep.
they said,
and both Dale Inman and Daddy was sitting there counting.
Yep.
And then
dropping
like
their
go.
yes.
It's like and. It turned out they won.
To the no speed limit on pit road. That was some awesome days when you're sitting in the pits and these guys come 200 miles an hour. It seemed like down pit road.
It was awesome if you was on this side of the wall.
That's what I'm saying.
It was a little scary.
And when you was changing tires, how'd that feel?
It was scary.
Yeah. All right, but you go back to talking about coming home in 1979 and 81 and
right.
rebuilding the engine. So you didn't do it in 80. You didn't do it in 78. I mean, again, I'm 10 years old. I don't remember.
Man, I don't know. I just remember those times because, you won the race.
Maybe looking back, should have come home every year.
Yeah. But I remember watching.
Can you imagine the coordination and effort it took?
It just shows how good a team.
Yes.
A team Petty Enterprises was. It wasn't no.
It wasn't no I or me or whatever.
But everybody that worked here.
But it goes to
did their part
to the victory lane.
Linking the chain
in the victory lane, and they interviewed Aunt Linda, and even she knew what kind of tough week they had.
Right.
And she was just thankful how everything played out, and she even made a mention of how y'all come home and made that engine change.
If you look at all the interviews after that 81 race of all the main players, they were happy they won, but they were exhausted. They were all wore out. Anybody, I mean, the whole crowd,
mentally and physically.
But it was that's the sacrifices they made to win.
As you say, the old Southern sayings, they went loaded for bear when they went to Daytona. They didn't leave nothing behind. They went to win.
Every year.
All the way in, as Hyder would say, right?
Absolutely.
All right, now, since Timmy keeps bringing up the 79, 81.
You got to tell it. It's part of it.
The Mickey Mouse hat, okay?
So, in 79, part of the deal is we went early, and as long as you got your school studies done, we went to Disney World a couple times. I mean, we was fortunate to be able to go. Well, our mom buys a hat identical to this in 79.
Because she thought it looked like Petty colors,
and
red, white, and blue.
Most people, they wore the STP hats and whatnot, but she bought him one of those. They win the race by chance. Everybody remembers that race, Cale Yarborough, Donnie Allison wrecking, and here comes the king 3/4 of a lap down and wins the race, which that's cool. All right, so they did not. I guess Buddy Baker won with a Gray Ghost in 80.
In 80, yeah,
right?
Richard was running good in 80.
But it just didn't pan out.
Or the clutch burn up or something.
Something weird happened.
Coming off pit road.
But, I mean, somebody can write in on that one and tell us. But, so, we were down there.
So, 1981.
Right.
This is our part in the win.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So when Timmy and the Chief come home to go to work on the engine,
we get to go
to Disney World because we stayed down at Daytona with Mom.
And our sister was with us.
We had our priorities.
But Daddy told Mama, he said, hey, pick me up another one of them hats and we'll see if it works again. So, while y'all were rebuilding the engine, by golly, we was
I know. And y'all
was over there buying a hat.
So anyway.
And I guess y'all had to look pretty hard to find it, huh?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Well, yeah, we had to ride all the rides till we found it.
I know.
But the moral of the story is we picked Chief up another Mickey Mouse hat, and it says it on there, 81 Daytona 500 win. I guess he wore them.
That was the last one he wore.
Yep.
He wore them twice, and it worked twice. And he said, "No more.
Yep.
You can't
quit while you're ahead."
Yeah, that's right. So that's our Mickey Mouse story.
That is a true story.
Our story, and we're sticking to it.
Hey, the Petty Brothers here. We've been getting some questions and comments about T-shirts and merch. We've got some T-shirts. we're going to be at the Petty Fest this weekend, and so come by our little tent, and you'll be able to buy some T-shirts or whatever else we got laying around. So hope to see you there.